Thank you, Paula, and welcome everybody to this month's Connect with Remedy webinar. Today we're going to discuss the BMC Helix ITSM and Remedy 1908 feature release. And during this presentation, any questions you can ask of our panelists. The panelist questions as well as this presentation recording will be published a week from today's live broadcast. And at this time, I'll turn it over to Peter Adams, our Senior Director of Product Management.
Thanks, Greg, and welcome as well to everybody on from my side here, wherever you are in the world. Very excited to share with you some of the key features that we have released in our 1908 release cycle. As the title of the webinar states, right, this information is in most cases applicable to both our Helix ITSM offering as a service, right, as well as our Remedy ITSM offering for on-premise. As we've shared many times, this is ultimately the same code base, and so most of the capabilities are available on both sides. There are a few exceptions, as we've discussed before, where certain cognitive services or our multi-cloud service management add-on capabilities are only available as a SaaS service, but again, everything in the core ITSM solution would be applicable to both sides, right? So the way how we have structured the webinar today is that I'll start out with a very brief overview of how that release is supporting our overall strategy. Again, very briefly, only the main content is really about the new capabilities. And those are, structured by, user experience, administration, operations, and then the more innovative parts around cognitive and DevOps-related improvements. And then we'll wrap up with a few references, a summary, and some Q&A at the end. And overall, we should have plenty of time to wrap up and give you a little bit of time back at the end, right? So if you look at what's happening in many IT organizations here, it's really an ever-increasing increase of heterogeneity as well as an ever-increasing amount of data and speed of innovation, right? Whether that applies to the infrastructure world, where many customers are moving to a multi-cloud environment, whether it's devices that are used, where things are now expanding into the IoT space, whether it's from a user experience, the different channels that are often available and customers are demanding, whether it's around the process side, where many companies are now exploring the benefits of DevOps, at least in certain select teams, whereas other teams are more following the traditional, processes, right? Or whether it's, the ever-increasing amount of data. In general, it's an ever increasing cycle of speed, heterogeneity, and that is very hard to handle with any solution that relies on manual work. And from that perspective, that's why BMC is so focused on switching over and focusing on cognitive capability in support of various activities, whether it's IT service management, IT operations management, right? Ultimately, to handle this complexity and scalability issue, it's essential to use cognitive capabilities, and that's really the main reason why we focus so much on pushing the limit around use of cognitive for customer support, but also for many other areas like risk management, in change management, et cetera, right? And so that's really our key focus from an ITSM process perspective. I would even claim that this entire area of DevOps is probably the most impactful one, as many companies are trying to find out how to bring these kind of two worlds together. And there's a lot of black and white thinking here when it comes to DevOps and ITSM. From our perspective, it's a lot about what delivers most value to companies and ultimately the best IT outcomes, right? And again, in context of that, that's why we message so strongly around the benefits of cloud, containers, cognitive, and now more and more also omni-channel as part of our solution offering, right? We talk a lot about BMC Helix as our SaaS offering, We really think that delivers a best-in-class experience to our customers because they don't have to worry about upgrades anymore, about infrastructure, all these complexities, right? But as stated before, we are of course fully committed to also support customers who want to continue to run our software like Discovery or ITSM or Digital Workplace on premise. All that is still possible, but as I stated, we believe that the outcome ultimately and the experience is better because customers in the SaaS world don't have to worry about all these complexities around upgrades and infrastructure, etc. Right? Now, big BMC motto is run and reinvent, and what we often see at IT organizations, that they have to deal with both the current solutions and maintaining them and keep them up and running, and at the same time, inventing certain interactions from an IT perspective, right? The same applies to us as a product. So we, on the one hand, we continue to maintain and incrementally improve our core ITSM capabilities. We're not trying to get rid of these or deprecate these, with maybe very few exceptions, right? But then on the other hand, we do see that the market is changing. We touched on some of these influencing factors before, and so we look at how to innovate the ITSM space with cognitive and looking at how DevOps and Agile and Lean IT thinking, all these new ways of working, how they influence the ITSM space, and how can we leverage these new ideas to get better IT outcomes, right? So when you look at what we're investing in all these Helix ITSM or Remedy ITSM releases, it's a balance between the bread and butter maintenance and incremental improvement areas, as well as we need to make sure that we're innovating and bring new values to our customer base. And the 1908 release very much reflects that general strategy approach. So to get more specific about what we've done in 1908, here's an overview of all the components that we've updated, very similar to the past as well. If you look at the left side, it's more the standard ITSM stack, from the AR system platform to Smart IT as a user experience. One component that I do want to call out here is that we've updated our virtual chat component. They have created a new release. We hadn't done that for a while, and that's in support of our new live chat capability that I'll touch on in more detail later on. We've introduced a very new and exciting user experience for live chat in that area. And then on the right side, these are more add-on components, so to speak, that are important for our ITSM use cases. One thing we want to talk about more and more in the future is around client management, right? Because a lot of our customers don't know that we have this asset available and that it's extremely valuable, specifically in a service desk context, right? To have a client management solution, because then you can drive a lot of the support activities directly from your ITSM solution, leveraging the automation capability and the discovery capabilities of this client management component, right? So more and more we'll touch on it as part of our ITSM solution overall. Now, when you look at the specific improvement areas of our 1908 release cycle, we largely, again, group it in three main themes here. One is around ITSM user experience, right? We continue to invest heavily into improving our experience, building out the capabilities that we have in Smart IT, in our new CMDB UI, but in some situations we're even improving, do point improvements in the mid-tier UI area. And I'll touch on that in more detail. That's actually the area where we'll do most of the live demos here. Then, as I stated, right, the innovation area is largely focused around how to use cognitive technologies to improve ITSM activities, and again, how to add value to DevOps-centric teams. And I'll touch on that in the second area. And then the third area is around lowering the cost of operations and administration. That applies to both, SaaS customers, of course, that don't have to worry about operations, as I stated before, but at least on the administration side for the application layer, there's still some topics that are relevant. And again, all the investment that we do to have an efficient operations in the SaaS side also benefit our on-premise customers because very often the operational challenges are the same across the board here. So let me dig into the details here. So again, the enhancements around the UX side largely focus on three main areas here. One is around our new smart IT capabilities. That's really where the majority of new user interactions are built out. In the same case for our configuration manager and CMDB administrator persona, it's the equivalent is the new CMDB UI. Those are the new user experiences that we really see as strategic for our ITSM solution. As stated before, right, we do make select mid-tier UI enhancements, and I'll touch on that in a second as well. So to show these kind of UX enhancements, it's the best to go and do a live demo. That's what I'm planning to do here. So let me switch over to my system here. Okay, so here you can see, let me see if I can move to full screen modus here. You can see that we have the Smart IT 1908 release. So the first thing I wanted to start out is our new ITSM calendar. If you remember, we had an ITSM calendar before in Smart IT, but it was very focused on this calendar view that you need when you schedule a new change request, right? There was no generic calendar that would just basically show everything you want to see in a specific week, right? All the changes that are going on, etc. And with the new ITSM calendar, we have such a view now, right? So it allows you to display, all the changes and releases in a calendar type view. You can see here there's a monthly view, a weekly view, a daily view, and a kind of list view that is specifically important if you have a very large number of changes on a single day, right? You have to find a mechanism to show that, and this list view is the main approach to that, right? Of course, you can again jump to different stages or different timelines. You can look forward into what changes are coming in a specific week. You always have this option to jump back to the current date, basically. And then let's move back to the week view, and then you can, of course, navigate back and forth with these arrow views, right? Already played a little bit around with the filter option here. So the filters basically influence what you can see on the screen. It's a very simple way. As stated, we support changes and releases as well as business event and outages. So again, those are all visible. And then you can as well filter out specific changes here, for example, based on risk level or based on status, right? So those are options to very rapidly filter and influence what you see on a specific day or week, depending on what you've selected here, right? There is a quick overview. By clicking on the corresponding change request, you see a very quick overview with all the essential information around risk level, what type of change it is, etc., who the owner is, etc. And then, of course, you can jump into more details around the corresponding change request that you just looked at from a calendar perspective, right? So that is our new ITSM calendar. As always, we will continue to refine it. We generally follow an iterative approach in building these capabilities out, but this was one of the key enhancement requests from the community, and very happy that we have now addressed it in our 1908 release, right? The second capability I want to talk about is our live chat capability. So if you recall, we have on the one hand our chatbot that is a fully automated cognitive chatbot capability to support customers as they look for information, as they want to submit requests. It's a conversational interaction with the chatbot that in turn then submits requests through Digital Workplace Advanced to the IT organization, right? But as always, when you build out a chatbot, it's extremely important to have a live chat option as well, because very likely when you build out this chatbot capability, we actually recommend that you focus on the most common use cases. And the most common ones, because you want to build out, have a good experience, right? Allow basically users to get help on these most common scenarios, and then as the chatbot gets accepted because users see value, you expand the scenarios. But that means by definition, when on day one you don't have everything available, right? Now that's why again it's extremely important to offer this kind of live chat support capability, because from within the chatbot window you can then basically ask for an agent help in case the chatbot does not deliver the right answer or doesn't find anything. You need to have that option to transition to a live chat capability. And what you can see here in the Smart IT UI is basically the agent-facing UI that allows a service desk agent to respond to a corresponding chat request, right? So when you look here, I get requests coming in. There could be multiple ones. As always, the service desk agent can respond to multiple requests, and then once you accept it, which I did before, you can submit an answer here and start chatting with the person here, right? So from that perspective, okay, the person says, hey, I can't, Joe says I can't connect to email, and then, hey, can you check the following, blah, 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 right? We don't want to go through the entire interaction, but you get the idea, right? You basically do a live chat support for an agent, and we've built a complete new experience for this live chat scenario. For the service desk agent, right? One thing that you see on the right side is we follow very much the same concept that we have with a smart recorder overall. When you start working with a customer, you see contextual information on the right side. So first of all, you see, again, that 360-degree view of the customer that from the smart recorder, right? So who the customer is, how happy they were, what the tickets are, what the assets are, right? The design is slightly different because you have a smaller space here, but then more importantly, you also see resources, right? So you can always go in and look for corresponding resources around email, etc., knowledge articles, etc. Right? And then when you create tickets, one thing that is new as well here is the option to create a work order, right? So in the previous live chat capability, we didn't have that option. You always had to create incidents, which I'm doing right now. But now with this new interaction, you can actually see also create work orders, right? Now, once you create the incident, again, the information from that chat interaction is stored here. So that's that's helpful information. You want to see what the user has tried to do before with a chatbot, and you'll see that up front as part of this work info node, basically, right? Otherwise, it's a standard incident, and you can again work with this like any other incident, right? So again, great new live chat capability that's fully integrated into the ITSM Smart IT user experience here. Then some of you may have noticed that we have this new self-help capability on the right side. This is something that other BMC products have already introduced, and we're now happy to announce that it's also available in Smart IT. This is our new help capability that we basically introduce for again various BMC products, and as you can see, right, it provides both links to certain documentation and help information in our doc spaces, and that help in general is context sensitive. So depending on what screens you are, you see different content here. So let's go to Smart Recorder, right? You see that it's a Smart Recorder specific help information then, right? But what this new kind of help capability also has, it allows to design these quick tours through functionality, and those tours are very helpful specifically for novice users, right? So it basically walks through the UI and explains certain elements of the UI. So it talks about the update section and the filtering capabilities, right? It says that you have a change calendar here. It says that you can use Smart Recorder and what it's used for. The different menu options. Basically, it walks through those, highlights that there's a search option. So it walks through the different capabilities, and we plan to overall expand this kind of help information through tours, through links to doc spaces, even videos. We plan to expand that over time, right? And that's really a new innovative approach around help in context of a modern user experience that Smart IT is, right? And by the way, if you want, you can even expand on that. That does require a certain extra license from a third-party technology that we use. The out-of-the-box content that we deliver is available for free, but if you wanted to build your own custom content, you'd need a license from the corresponding technology. It's called WhatFix, and then you can build out your own help text in case you want that, right? So those are a few highlights of the Smart IT UI. Let me switch over to the CMDB UI. As always, I highlight only the key enhancement areas. There's always more detail, and I'll touch on that in a second as well. So similar to Smart IT on the CMDB UI, we focus on building out capabilities here. A lot of it is about transitioning capabilities that we had in our legacy Atrium Explorer UI over to this new experience. Of course, as we implement these capabilities, we always look at, what can we innovate, what can we improve. So it's not just a one-to-one mapping. We always look at how can we fundamentally improve the interaction. And by now, as of 1908, we're pretty comprehensive when it comes to these Atrium Explorer capabilities, right? We added a number of new capabilities here in 1908, so that there's only very few things missing, and we'll likely, wrap this kind of transition up in the in the next release cycle here. So some of the things that we've added, again, that were not available in this new CMDB UI before, is the class manager capability. So you have here on the left side a navigation area where you see all the different classes of the data model. It represents the hierarchy. You can either browse or you can search. Let me say you wanna see searched a class for a computer system, right? You basically search for the word system, and it would search specifically. Let me you do this even more here. Computer system, right? It would basically filter down or search down the hierarchy, and you could easily then select the class and see the attributes here on the right side. So one thing you note here when you look at the right side is, it first lists all the attributes it inherits from the corresponding parent classes here. But it also then lists the attributes that are specific to this class here that it basically introduces here. And for those you can actually drill down into details, right? So if you wanted to go into the details about the base element attributes class, you'd have to go to the base element class. Right now I'm on computer system, and if you want to drill into details, you basically can go into the details. You see a description, what this attribute means, the permissions. You see basically a lot of information, and you can again edit both the class level as well as the basically the attribute level. You can add new attributes, you can manage classes, you can modify, right? There's a lot of information in here, right? That's a full-fledged class management capability with a very easy to use user experience. Again, you can not just look at the attributes, you can look at permissions for the class overall, indexes, information about CI mappings, relationship, and this is available for the core classes as well as the relationship classes here, obviously, as well. Those are all part of the data model here, right? So again, end-to-end class management capability. That is a big rock that we delivered in the 1908 capability. The second area I want to touch on is we expanded the Explorer capability that we had introduced earlier. Two things that we added here is when you look at the contextual menu here, on the one hand, we've added an impact simulation capability here in the Explorer. That's part of the new CMDB UI. So again, you can simulate impact of unavailability across the service model. And then if you look at the launch options here, you also see these launch in context menu items that are fully manageable, basically, from within a separate administrative menu. These are the launch in context menus that we had also in the old Explorer, right? So that is now available as well in the Explorer here in the new CMDB UI. And then last but not least, as you know, the new CMDB UI has both a basic search capability, that was the one I used before, as well as a more advanced one, right? So you can basically build out more advanced queries and say, hey, if I want to look for computer systems, and I use a very simple query here where the name is, I don't know, Mercedes, and then build a logical expression here, or name equals, let's say, Bentley. Those are, our CI or server names are all based on car brands, right? Then you can build these kind of complex queries that was available before, and you can do it, and you basically find the corresponding search results, right? What is new is that you can now save these capabilities so that you can define these complex queries with logical expressions, and as well basically save it, right? Server queries, and you say Bentley or Mercedes. That's again just to showcase here. You can save it, and then it will correspondingly show up here in a new category, and you have the corresponding queries. So you can very easily bring the same query up again. You don't have to kind of enter this logical expression every time, right? So those are some of the key enhancements that we've done in the Smart IT UI and in the CMDB UI. Let me quickly switch over here to one thing. As I mentioned, we do point enhancements around the ITSM mid-tier UI as well. The key and most visible one that you'll see in 1908 is that we updated our login screen. So this is not the login screen for RSSO or for Smart IT. This is the new login screen for the mid-tier UI. It aligns, again, obviously with UX design that we have for Smart IT and Remedy single sign-on and other products. And again, other than logging in, it's mainly an update, a refresh of the user experience, so customers have a modern logging experience. Once you log in, the UI will very much look the same on the mid-tier side. We did make some updates around logos, company logo, etc., some minor visual polish, basically. But overall, again, the UI works in the same as before, right? So this was really a kind of an overview of all the capability that we introduced on the UX side. Again, I touched on the main enhancement areas here in this Smart IT UI, for example, the first three ones. Now, there are a few other things that we have, tweaked and improved. As always, there's refinement going on. For example, around the SLA bar, we made some enhancement here. There were some inconsistencies. When you look at all the different scenarios, one service target, multiple service targets. What is it if it's violated or not? What's the overall status of the bar, etc. So again, some tweaks to basically make that interaction with the SLA bar more consistent across all the different ticket types, right? Then we did some performance improvements in the Smart IT area. Again, we find areas sometimes where the queries are not optimal, and so we've done improvement areas. All that is fully documented in the 1908 doc space, right, when all the doc spaces basically have a section which explain the improvements. So both in the Smart IT one as well as in the general ITSM one, you find information about all these detailed enhancements. And then there is an option now to make tweaks to the configuration of Smart IT without doing a server restart, right? That's important to influence the user experience as well. On the CMDB UI, I highlighted the class manager, the impact simulator, the safe searches, and then to some degree also the launch in context actions, although again there is an admin UI basically available as well to define or modify these launch in context actions. The one area I didn't show is the Atrium Explorer, Atrium Integrated Job Management capability. So in this 1908 release, you can actually create jobs, not just look at them, create new jobs. Again, all in support of building out the full CMDB administration and config manager capability, right? And then in the Meteor UI, again, the most visible ones is the new login, logout screen. We quickly had a look at that, but there are a few areas as well. Performance improvement, again, specifically when it comes to user or customers who use multi-tenancy, hierarchical groups. There were some areas where we had quite some significant improvements, and so it's definitely worthwhile if you're using such a scenario to look at 1908. But then even in other areas like AR reporting, we have now an add all fields option. Again, one of the highly rated ideas in the community. We wanted to make sure that we pick at least the most important ones from the community and deliver on it, right? And then last but not least, again, client management we see more and more as part of the service desk user experience, and so we have now new capabilities around client management. You can trigger this from within an asset screen. For example, you can see details of a corresponding asset. You can start remote control sessions on a desktop or a laptop that a customer has that is calling into the service desk. A couple of new capabilities that we released in this round around client management is that not only can you launch these remote control sessions, you can actually record them as well. So, again, that sometimes helps from a support perspective to later on rerun those remote control sessions and see how this goes. Then client management has traditionally a Java console, but we are building out kind of a web console in parallel that adheres to the same modern user experience that you know here. And from that perspective, we've expanded the capabilities of the web console, and then also we expanded around patch management, a number of functional enhancements around patch management. Right? So again, this was a lot around user experience. You can see, a lot has happened in the 1908 release around user experience. So let's move on to the next section here, cognitive service management and then DevOps, right? So the first thing that I want to touch on is actually kind of straddling both areas, user experience as well as DevOps and cognitive, but I decided to put it in that section because it really is mostly in support, or we've implemented this mostly in support of the new ways of working, so to speak. If you recall, in 1902 we started talking about swarming as a new way of organizing your service desk that is a bit more aligned with the principles of DevOps and Agile. And we had introduced functionality in 1902 within our own Smart IT chat capability that support this kind of swarming organization. For example, within that chat window, you could, through command lines, basically look up knowledge, find people, other people who are knowledgeable about an incident, and basically all in support of this swarming capability, right? 1908 now introduces the next step of this capability, and that is we are transferring this swarming interaction now to enterprise collaboration tools. And in this release, we specifically support now Microsoft Teams. So this actually helps with swarming, because when you do swarming across different functions, not just your own service desk, but let's say you want to involve subject matter experts from a product team, operational people, etc. Sometimes they're not that familiar with the ITSM solution itself, with the UI, and they're much more comfortable in collaborating with an enterprise standard tool like MS Teams, right? And so now you can have such a collaborative interaction within your standard enterprise tool. Like Microsoft Teams, you can basically collaborate jointly on a specific issue. And the new thing is here now within Microsoft Teams, you can reach out to the ITSM system and trigger interactions with the ITSM system, right? Even make modifications to tickets. And that's why we often refer to this as ChatOps, right? If you recall, in the ops area, this concept of ChatOps has evolved, that people hang out in a collaboration tool and basically trigger actions, whether it's a server restart or kicking off a new build. They trigger these actions from within the collaboration tool. And we are doing very much the same, but more from a support perspective, that you're able to trigger interactions with your ITSM system from within the collaboration tool, right? And by the way, we're using a cognitive agent here, so that you can even use natural language to interact and trigger these actions, right? And to some extent, it's another support on our omni-channel strategy. Now, when we talk about omni-channel, we often talk about business user and giving them the option to work in different UIs. But here we are starting our omni-channel strategy also for the IT users, right? So let me start this, and I use a recording here, and that just makes it a little bit easier here. So ultimately what you do here, we're in MS Teams now. You basically can contact the Helix chatbot. In this case, it's called Helix ChatOps. And you can see that there's different types of commands you can do, and we support both kind of formalized commands that start with a slash, as well as kind of add any natural language interaction like update status or add activity, right? And you can actually expand and train the chatbot in other areas. So when you look at how such a formalized command works, you enter slash details and the instance ID. The system basically reaches out to the ITSM solution, gets the information back, again shows that in the context of this collaboration tool. You don't have to switch UIs, go back and forth between different UIs, something that we have seen many customers do, many service desk organizations do, right? On the one hand, they have the ITSM UI open, but then in the side they have a collaboration tool, right? Want to bring those two things together. And then here's an example, what the system can do in terms of natural language, right? So, and complex interaction. So here you can see when you say update status, you basically, the chatbot comes back and asks you questions, right? And so then you have to specify what is the incident ID, what should be the new status, etc. And because, usually there's multiple people in this collaboration room, right, you have to actually ping the chatbot here explicitly, so that it understands you're responding to the chatbot. Yeah, so that's a little bit different from your standard chatbot interaction, where it's usually just a one-to-one interaction, because here multiple people are involved in the same room. You have to explicitly ping the chatbot for this kind of ChatOps interaction. Again, so it ultimately asks to confirm that you want to update the record, and then you can do that from within the Microsoft Teams interactions. If you then go over to the corresponding incident, you can see that the status has switched from assigned correspondingly to the new status that we've introduced, right? So it's now in progress, right? So that's, again, a new innovative interaction, again, in support of a collaboration model that is, in many cases, more aligned with, again, companies that follow a DevOps and an Agile principle, because many of the ground rules are the same: collaborative work, no work sitting in a queue. You're really trying to collaboratively solve the inflow of work, right? So the second topic is, as you know, we have our multi-cloud service management solution that helps companies solve problems from multiple use cases, whether it's about ticket brokering or DevOps integrations or ticket consolidation. There's multiple scenarios where our multi-cloud service management solution helps companies be more efficient. It's an integration hub that basically connects different solutions, but there's a lot of additional functionality on top of it. UI integration, dashboards, etc. And we continuously build out these capabilities because the world is more and more a connected place. We have to ensure that you interact with external providers, with other systems efficiently, right? There is a new use case that we're introducing in 1908 here, and that's around integration with Microsoft Azure Alert. So this is a monitoring capability that is part of Microsoft Azure, and to some degree it's a new use case for our multi-cloud service management solution, in that it basically is incident intake from a monitoring solution, and you can again now implement this to multi-cloud service management. We have a new connector for Azure Alerts that basically pick up certain alerts. You can specify that through policies, and then convert those into incidents, right? So let me showcase this to you again, because it uses multiple systems. I'm using a recorded demo here. So here you can see Microsoft Azure Alerts, and you have the option to define rules. What happens if, for example, a virtual machine goes down, you trigger certain actions, right? This is the alert configuration within Microsoft Azure Alerts. It's nothing, it's very Microsoft specific, nothing on the ITSM side so far. But, from within these policies, you can now define to create a corresponding incident in the ITSM world. So let me go through an example here. This is a virtual machine. We are starting this virtual machine now, and the policy that we had looked at before basically says when the virtual machine goes down, then you create an alert, and that should be converted to an incident. That was one of the actions associated with this alert. So we're stopping this machine now, basically, and then correspondingly alert will fire, and then because the corresponding action has been defined for this alert, the corresponding incident is created here. So if you look at the alerts, the total number of alerts has increased. It was 6 before, now it's 7. It has created a new alert, and correspondingly a new incident has been created on the ITSM side, fully automatically. Again, once you build and deploy these alert rules on the Microsoft Azure side, it'll create the incident automatically. And as always, when you use Helix multi-cloud service management, you have a UI integration. You see the details of the alerts here from within your Smart IT UI, and then from here you can overall branch into the details of the alert on the Microsoft Azure side. Right? A great new use case. It basically helps companies deal with these alerts, from within a consistent service desk experience, right? The other area that we built out, this is not a first release, we had supported Azure DevOps, Microsoft's new agile software development tool. We had supported that in the previous release for the first time, but we continue to build out the use cases, what you can do around integration with Azure DevOps. So in case you use that versus Jira, the capability are not quite one-to-one yet between the two. On the Jira side, we had started much earlier, and this is now a very comprehensive set of interactions, and we are in the process of building out a corresponding set of interactions for the DevOps tool on the Azure side, right? Now, last topic I wanted to talk about in this cognitive and DevOps area is our new cognitive functions that we introduced in 1908. If you recall, we had introduced a cognitive service, a machine learning service, quite a while ago, and kind of integrated it with a platform so that we can build out use cases on our side, but you can also build custom use cases that make use of this cognitive machine learning service. Our initial release focused a lot around service desk-centric use cases. If you recall, we can do auto categorization through this machine learning service. We can do inbound email processing, very interesting use case, right, where you save a lot of time for manually assessing these inbound emails by having the cognitive service assess it, route it, respond to the user, can do a lot of things fully automated for these inbound emails. And now we are slowly but surely expanding it into other areas. So this is, for example, a change risk recommendation. So the system is basically trained based on historic data in your system, changes that you had managed in the past. And then based on this learning, it will basically suggest the risk level for a corresponding new change request, right? So you can see here the recommendation on the right side in the activity stream. The cognitive service basically added a corresponding recommendation, right? And similarly for problem management, the cognitive service now can recommend a root cause for the corresponding problem investigation. Again, all based on learnings in the system here, and from the data in the system here. So I can show that very quickly live here. So let's say let me see here, and I need to, I'll start it with let me look first at the change request here. So you can see the suggested risk level basically is automatically added. You don't need to do anything. As soon as you create a corresponding change request and you have this cognitive capability enabled, correspondingly the system will add a corresponding note to the system here. Let me just copy this here. So if you have, correspondingly for problem management, let's say you're on an incident, you had some issue with email. It turns out there's some issue with email server itself, and you want to create a new problem investigation here. I changed the title a little bit, and you confirm and save it. Then correspondingly, the machine learning service goes out and basically adds a corresponding root cause, and you can see it came in automatically, right? You don't have to do anything. And again, we consider this a recommendation or suggestion, right? In the end, it's up to the user to decide, do they want to take that over into the root cause or not? It's more a suggestion rather than filling it automatically, right? But you can see we're expanding the use of machine learning into other areas beyond just the service desk. We're looking at problem management and now also change management, right? Okay, so the last topic is around cost of operations and administration. As always, we are trying to reduce the cost, both for our own SaaS operations as well as for our customers, and make things easier around administration and operations. The key highlights here of enhancements in 1908 for this release, first of all, We have now a better option to handle custom asset CI classes when it comes to inventory interactions. In the past, if you created a new custom asset CI class, you had to manually customize the workflow to be able to interact with the inventory. Now it's the pure configuration setting, right? As you create the class, in this schema names form, you basically set a field in inventory to yes, and then basically that ensures that the custom or CIs of that custom asset CI class can interact with the inventory, right? So it's a configuration rather than a customization, right? Second enhancement I want to talk about is updates to the CDM, the common data model on the CMDB. Occasionally, and this is the case here in 1908, we do make adjustments to the CDM data model, and this is largely driven by technology changes that we see in the market, right? For example, we see that ultimately more and more things are virtualized, right? It's not just a virtual server anymore. Storage, pretty much everything these days can be virtualized, and correspondingly, we decided to have this is virtual attributes that you see here, that we decided to put this into the base element class, because that makes sure it's really a part of every class that's derived from base element, not just from a select set of classes that we had before. Again, it's ultimately a reflection of a technology change in the industry, but occasionally we need to adjust our CDM data model to make sure that we align with these technology changes, and then in some cases we also just get feedback from customers, how to further optimize the data model. For example, how to track the location of assets in a data center, right? Very often customers specify the location by the pillar in the data center room, right? And so, correspondingly, we added an attribute to the location relationship, right? So, just again, mostly for awareness, there's all the detail in the documentation space. You can read up on it in more detail, but I did want to highlight that there are changes to the data model here, right? Now, the next enhancements I want to talk about is something very exciting. Again, one of the top ideas in the community that we were able to address in this 1908 release, and that's the option to be able to consume external REST APIs from within your Remedy workflow. And the ability to, again, call that REST API and then consume the responses as part of your workflow. It was possible before, but you had to either develop your own plugin or you had to use a community plugin, and that worked actually fairly well. Again, thanks for LJ for providing this for the past years, right? But we're very happy now that this is part of our standard product capability now, and then fully integrated into the Dev Studio experience. So just quick showcase how this looks like. And again, this is just a very brief overview. I'm certainly not a development expert here, but you can see, this is now one of the data sources in the set fields area, and we support, different methods basically that REST APIs typically use, right? Then you specify your URI. In this case, we're calling some kind of weather-related service that's available externally. You can pass information into this REST API call from within your own solution, right? So you typically have parameters that you pass into this REST API call, and you can build this out. Of course, you have to handle authentication, and we do support different authentication mechanisms as part of this REST API call. Again, that you have to specify in Dev Studio here. And then last but not least, well, you can as well pass some custom header information, right? And then ultimately you have to specify what you do in terms of consuming the responses, right? What it maps to and what you do with the responses. And that's, again, basically how you process this further within your form, where you store it, et cetera, et cetera. Right? So in this case, you see we get 3, key information back from the external services, the timing of the sunrise, sunset, and then the weather forecast, right, of the day. And then you can store that, for example, in a specific form here, right, and then do something with it. So here, the REST API call is basically triggered when you click on save. This is a call that we have already done. But if you change correspondingly in the information in the corresponding form and save the form, right? If you change, for example, the location to Santa Clara, right, it would go out, call the REST API service, and you get responses back on when the sunrise timing is, and then you use standard Remedy workflow to further process it, right? Again, just a quick overview of how this looks like from a Dev Studio perspective, right? Another change we have done on Dev Studio is that you can now use a single sign-on to authenticate to Dev Studio. Now, in most cases, because Dev Studio is a fat client, there's other ways to protect it. But we have worked with some of the federal customers that had a mandate for specific authentication mechanisms across the board, and so that was one of the reasons why we introduced this single sign-on experience for Dev Studio, right? You can basically then use any kind of supported authentication type that comes with the Remedy single sign-on mechanism, right? Moving on to reporting, smart reporting. So smart reporting had a couple of administrative enhancements. One new capability is a more real-time user sync between the core ITSM system and smart reporting. This basically allows you to implement a mechanism as you add users to the AI user form. You'd basically see a corresponding update on the smart reporting configuration. That user would more or less immediately be available on the smart reporting side, right? So a simplification and an update to the user sync mechanism. And then another bit more administrative aspect here is how you organize reporting content in a multi-tenant environment, right? So when you have multiple companies, basically, and you have reports that should be shared between multiple tenant companies, you have an option now to make sure that you define this only once in a kind of a shared organization model, right, versus having to recreate that same report across different tenant companies multiple times. Okay, getting closer to the end here. On the platform side, we do now support Postgres as well as Aurora database in AWS as database platforms for our ITSM solution. The main goal here is to lower the cost of database licensing. So we continue, obviously, to support Microsoft and Oracle, but we wanted to provide our customers a low-cost option to operate the ITSM system with a low-cost database. Again, either Aurora if you decide to operate your ITSM system or custom Remedy system in AWS as a infrastructure platform, right, or Postgres if it's on premise, right. So that's very exciting. It allows you to lower your cost of ownership, and then to wrap things up, as in every release, we are supporting a number of new versions with each release, right? Specifically around Oracle JDK 12. We talked last time around our new strategy regarding Oracle, that we support these new short-term releases on the Java side as they come out with Open JDK to make sure that companies can continue to use a free Java version. So that's something that we'll continuously update. We are supporting now the new Microsoft Exchange server version with the EWS protocol, Office 365, Windows Server 2019. You see, the different updates that we've done around the platform side. And again, that's part of our standard maintenance investment that we do for the ITSM solution. Right? So that was an overview of all the new capabilities, at least the key ones. The most comprehensive list of these enhancements is actually in the ITSM doc space. So if you go to the ITSM suite doc space for 1908, that's really the overview that lists all the enhancements across all the components in a single place. Of course, each individual doc space for each component has a list or a summary of the 1908 enhancements as well. So if you go into, let's say, Smart IT doc space, you'll see the Smart IT specific ones. But this the doc space for the ITSM suite is really the overview, right? And then there's also a 15-minute video that talks about enhancements in 1908, not just for Helix ITSM or Remedy ITSM. It talks about enhancement across the board for the other Helix components. So in case you're interested, you'll find the key highlights from the ITSM suite, but as well you hear about all the other components, right? Apologies. Okay, so as a summary, right, lots of enhancements that we've done in 1908. A big chunk of investment went into user experience enhancements, and you saw those in a live demo. Lots of big new functional areas like Class Manager, Live Chat, Calendar, right? All these were big rocks that we were able to deliver in 1908. We continue to deliver innovation around the use of cognitive technology in the ITSM context with our new recommendations around change risk and problem root cause. We continue to support customers in new interaction models that are very aligned with the DEVOPS model. And specifically, I want to highlight here our ChatOps capability. And then last but not least, we continue to keep up to date with version numbers, and then overall lower the cost of operations and administration. Apologies, I had to take a sip of water here. All this, again, is done, our investment is done in support of making sure Helix ITSM or Remedy ITSM is the leading ITSM solution in the market, and we're very happy to share with you that just the recent ITSM critical capabilities report really lists BMC Helix ITSM as the #1 solution when it comes to advanced maturity IO or digital workplace use cases. ITSM is really the #1 in terms of functional capabilities. And actually, when you look into the individual breakdowns into functional areas, incident, change, knowledge, user experience, process configuration, etc. As Gartner breaks this down, we really have the #1 lead in 9 out of 12 capabilities and are very close to #1 in the other ones. So it's a reflection that we continue to invest in the core ITSM space, continue to build out innovative new capability, and continue to lead in the market in terms of these capabilities, right? Have quite a significant lead over the other solutions in this area. With that, I think we have a few minutes for questions, and so I think we can open the lines, or if there's questions in the Q&A section, we can start addressing those.
Perfect. Paula, would you be able to give directions to our callers to signal us for questions, please?
Certainly, thank you. To signal for a question, please press *1 on your touch-tone telephone. Also, if you are using a speakerphone, please make sure that your mute button is turned off to allow your signal to reach our equipment. A voice prompt on your phone line will indicate when your line has been opened. Please state your name before posing your question. Once again, *1 on the phone lines for questions.
Peter, I have one from the panelist chat. The question is, I am assuming the new live chat console can be used for the current virtual chat tool as well as CHATBOT, where a bot, hang on, sorry about that, where a bot can't answer and pass to a real agent.
Yeah, so let me answer it this way. First of all, yes, ultimately it's built on this virtual chat component. You would have to upgrade, and I do want to call out, as you upgrade and want to use the new live chat interaction, the user experience that we built and that I showcased today, it does have an impact on the legacy UX. So, that's all documented. Make sure that you read the documentation, because certain capabilities, are disabled after or not longer available after the upgrade. I just want to make everybody aware of it, right? But yes, you would have to move to the latest 1908 version to be able to use the new user experience. But it is, part of that virtual chat component and licensed in the same way. You basically are entitled to use this new live chat capability in the same, based on the license entitlement that you had for virtual chat, right? Whether that you license it through Digital Workplace Advanced or, license it as a standalone component. We had done that for a number of years, no longer available, but for a number of customers are still on that old pricing model. No matter how you've done it, right, you would be able to be entitled to use the new live chat capability. But again, I want to highlight, with the move of 1908, you would have to rely on this new user experience. We're basically disabling the mid-tier UI experience, so be aware of that. And then from a user interaction perspective, on the business user side, it's fully integrated with the chatbot. The chatbot itself is a different a component, and that does require separate licensing. But from an interaction perspective, those two are very closely aligned, right? So what you do basically is, as a business user, and we didn't show that in the demo, as a business user, you bring up the chat view. Basically, you usually start interacting with the chatbot first, and then if the chatbot doesn't provide an answer, from within the same way, you kind of transfer over to the live chat, right? You can ask basically to be transferred over to the live chat, and then you continue to work in the same UI, but now you're no longer talking to the chatbot, you're talking to the live chat, to the live agent, right?
Thank you, Peter.
But again, licensing-wise, the two are separate. I do want to highlight that.
Thank you, Peter. I have a follow-on question to that about Live Chat Console. Is it available within the mobile iOS version of Smart IT?
As far as I know, it's only available for the web UI.
Thank you. And Paula, do we have any questions, online questions queued up?
And there are no questions at this time.
Okay, if you'd like to ask a question, Paula, can you provide those instructions one more time?
Certainly. Once again, please press *1 for telephone questions. And we do have a caller in the queue.
Hey, hi. This is Saurabh. I work for Navy Site Spectrum. So it's like I have a question. I have the ITSM suite implemented on-prem, where I want to use this virtual chat, live chat option with the on-prem which we have 19.02 currently, which we are planning to upgrade to 19.08 by in next quarter. So is it possible I will use these functionalities of a chatbot, a live chat, and cognitive with that?
Yeah, it was a bit hard to understand, but I think I got your questions. First of all, thanks for asking. The live chat capability is supported on-premise, so you can implement that, and it would not require any cloud component. Once you implement the chatbot, the chatbot is a SaaS service in itself. You can deploy it together with ITSM and Digital Workplace on-premise, so you can have a hybrid setup. But the chatbot service itself is a cloud service because ultimately it reaches out to IBM Watson. You probably remember that we use IBM Watson as the underlying AI technology, right? So the chatbot functionality would involve a SaaS service that you have to subscribe to. But you can use it in context of an on-premise deployment of ITSM and digital workplace, right? And again, on the live chat or virtual chat side, that part works fully on-premise as well, right?
Thanks. And the same goes with the cognitive services?
Yeah, all of our cognitive services are really, cognitive services in the cloud because, again, they all reach out to IBM Watson, the cloud service as the underlying AI technology. As of today, we start to support different cognitive technologies as an option. I think we shared in general our strategy here that we plan to support multiple different AI technologies, not just Watson, but also Google TensorFlow. And we're starting to roll this out now, the other options. But again, the cognitive service from BMC is ultimately a SaaS service that you have to subscribe to. And then your on-premise solutions would basically work together with a SaaS service in a hybrid scenario, basically, right?
So
so it applies to both chatbot as well as cognitive automation.
Right. So it's like in the subsequent of that question, it's like, do you have any plans, or we have any plans to document all those stuff where with a different permutation or combination? Let's say one permutation is like if we have the on-prem solution, defined ITSM solution with the latest and the greatest version of the ITSM, and if we have the SaaS solution for like chatbot and SaaS, how we can do, or vice versa. Because might be in my organization we are using the Watson that is used for different applications, right? Or so we can leverage that Watson with my BMC product. So is there any plan for the documentation for different permutation and combination if you want to go with that, or might be plan some upgrades or implement this?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's really a permission question, right? At least not permissions in the sense of ITSM user permissions, right? It's really about compatibility. I think what combinations of tools and deployment options we are supported officially, right? I think that's what you ask for, and there should be documentation if you go to chatbot or information about our cognitive automation service. I do believe there's documentation that you can use it both with Helix ITSM, let's say if you deployed your ITSM solution in SaaS, or with Remedy ITSM if you deployed it on-premise. It works with both ways, and that compatibility is explained as far as and documented as far as I know. I'm happy to look at this again and then take this as your feedback to make sure this is clearly explained. But again, as far as I know, this should be documented as part of compatibility info.
Thanks.
Okay, thanks for your feedback. Any other callers with questions?
And there are no further phone questions at this time.
Peter, I have a couple of questions from chat, and then we can move to wrap up. First question is the containerized Helix available for deployment on private clouds built on VMware infrastructure?
No, we continue to use containers only in our SaaS model today. We don't provide them to customers and control them on their own deployments. Main reason is that we still are optimizing this entire ecosystem, right? We're still fine-tuning how granular the containers are. We're still changing some of the tooling, right? We started out with a certain set of tools, and then realized, okay, maybe another tool is more efficient to operate such a container environment, right? So we're still fine-tuning it, and we don't want to expose it to customers until it's fully built out, stable, best practices are documented, et cetera, right? So we're still, in the tuning and optimization phase on our side, and right now we want to complete that first before we hand it out to customers for their own deployments, right?
Perfect, thank you. And then the last question for today's session is there a self-help capability for DWP end users?
As far as I know, yes. Again, the self-help capability had already been introduced in other areas, in the multi-cloud service management UI, I believe in DWP as well, in business workflows. So most of our components have that now. And then, again, we're happy to announce that it's also available for the Smart IT UI with 1908.
So for contacting BMC, it's available via our self-help mechanisms, our YouTube channel, where this webinar recording as well as many how-to videos are available. Our webinar schedule is available on this communities link. And as always, our knowledge base is available for self-help 24 hours a day via the support portal. And technical support can be contacted via web, phone, email, as well as the following social channels. That concludes this month's Connect with Remedy webinar. This, again, will be posted with a Q&A a week from today's live date. And I just want to thank everyone for joining, and special thanks to our presenter, Peter, and the panelists that helped today. Thank you.